Hello, class, and welcome to Social Justice Activism this week. I hope you all are doing well. I'm going to start off very quickly with a few comments before we get into this week's lecture. I just want to let you all know that I'm on top of reading all of your posts and all of your responses, not only to me, but to your fellow classmates. And I must tell you that I was very impressed with last week's quality of responses, and there was better engagement this week on the discussion board. Again, I need for you all to do as best as you can in terms of facing this class on a weekly basis. Now, I was pleased to read all of your quality responses and perspectives, and I want to continue to urge and encourage and to motivate you to be open, to continue to observe all of these nuances. I know it's a lot of information, and I need for you to continue to challenge not only each other in your critical analysis of what we are covering each week, but I want you all to remain curious. Take it upon yourselves to take a deeper look at all of the course content and do additional research on your own. And I'm very confident that you all have a feel for how I structure my class. I know each professor is different based off of how they conduct their online classes. And my total goal is to keep you motivated, to keep you encouraged, and to present information that you know, that you're familiar with, but also information that you don't know from a historical standpoint to present day, and from a intergenerational aspect as well. So keep up the good work, and thank you so much based off of the quality of your responses, not only to me, but to your fellow classmates, is a good indicator to me that I believe that you all are absorbing the material well in the course modules. And remember, if you have any difficulties at any point during the semester, we're at the halfway point. Please, I can't stress enough to don't hesitate to reach out to me so I can address any concerns or questions or offer my support to you as best as I can. So on that note, we're going to get right into the lecture. Now, there have been social movements throughout our history, and I'm going to refer to my notes, class, because I want to make sure that I stay on track. There have been many social movements throughout history that have drastically changed our society throughout the history of the United States, and internationally, nationally, locally, and as well as on a global basis. And there have been a number of notable and very important social movements. Now, these type of social movements have been revolutionary and radical in their aims, and many social movements have led to many reforms in existing systems, the systems in which we function. And this week we're going to cover the Civil Rights Movement, also known as CRM. The Civil Rights Movement is one of the most notable social movements in history. The civil rights movement was not just about civil rights, but also about social justice, economic justice, environmental justice, reproductive rights, poverty injustices, the wars in Vietnam, racial discrimination, segregation, Jim Crow, education reform, the right to vote, and so much, much more. The civil rights movement fought to end long-standing political and unjust laws that discriminated and oppressed many Black Americans, if not all Black Americans and African Americans. The civil rights movement is also very important, and this movement is very influential when it comes to other social movements. Other social movements have been inspired, and other social movements have been driven by the civil rights movement. And this particular movement, which is still ongoing today, are directed and specifically aimed at social change by using a lot of the tactics and the methods and the strategies that we've covered so far in class. Now, as far as methods of direct action, boycotts, demonstrations, protests, rallies, marches, nonviolent, and sometimes violent civil disobedience tactics, the constant important themes related to social movements are at the core of conflict relations with clearly identified opponents. Social movements are also linked by dense and informal networks. This has been constant in our time together in class. And social movements, they all share a distinct collective identity, especially the civil rights movement. Now, the era of this particular movement included mass action of several individuals and collectives in communities such as churches, local grassroots organizations, communities, neighbors, workers, again, individuals, institutions, organizations, schools, organized labor, and people from all walks of life who participated in nonviolent and peaceful protests, direct action, to call attention and to shed light to the public, to others who would either intervene, who would advance, or provide public pressure in support of many unjust acts within the civil rights movement. And again, the civil rights movement took a very, very, very long time, and the many types of civil disobedience from many networks as well as submerged networks really culminated in order to really change society. And we are still currently in the midst of reforming and transforming and transfiguring the world and this free world in which we occupy. Now, I want to talk to you about the 4 stages of social movements. Now, the 4 stages of social movements describe how movements form and how they increase in size and possibly dissolve. Sociologist Dr. Herbert Bloomer states that, and I'm going to quote him, that the full expanse of human action isn't just following pre established rules and patterns. New situations constantly arise. Now, Dr. Bloomer believes that individuals create their own social realities through collective action as well as individual action, and he identified and came up with life cycles of the four stages of social movement. Now, Dr. Bloomer developed this concept back in 1969. So let's begin with the first of four stages of social movement. The first stage is emergence. Now, the first stage of a social movement's lifestyle, known as the emergent stage, uh, is critical. And during this stage, social movements are very preliminary. They're very new, and there is little to no organization whatsoever. This stage can be thought of as, you know, coming together to talk about these common grievances that we have. Potential potential movement participants may be discontent with some policies or some unjust laws or some social condition, but they have not taken direct action or any action in order to resolve these injustices, or if they have taken action in order to resolve injustices, it is most likely that individual action has taken place rather than collective action. Now, the next stage, stage two, is coalescence. Coalescence. Now, during this particular stage in the life cycle of the four stages of social movement, this this stage has to overcome some barriers, maybe many barriers, which may have never been overcome before or resolved. Now, often social unrest or discontent passes without any organizing or widespread mobilization within a particular social movement. Now, coalescence, or the popular name that is called the popular stage, is distinguished by more clearly defined sense of dissatisfaction, being very specific in naming it and calling it out. And it's no longer just a general sense of discontent, but now a sense of what the discontentment is all about, getting to the root and who or what is responsible. Now, discontent is no longer uncoordinated or individual. Coalescence, it tends to become more focalized or more formalized as a collective. And this is a critical stage. All four stages are critical and very important, but to know these stages and to recognize them are, key concepts and theories as we dissect social movement. Now, stage three is bureaucratic. I have a hard time enunciating and pronouncing this word. Bureaucratization. Bureaucratization. And bureaucratization is the formulation and it's described by higher platforms of organization or organizing and mobilizing. And this also involves coalition building, solidarity strategies. Now, in this stage, social movement They've had success, and in that they have raised a understanding to a level that a coordinated strategy is key. It's essential, and it flows across the social movement organization, SMO. If you recall, we talked about SMO, social movement organization. Now, the fourth stage of Dr. Bloomer's life cycle of social movement is the stage of decline. And this last stage is, it brings the social movement life cycle to a decline. Or another word for decline is institutionalization. And decline and institutionalization does not necessarily mean that the social movement organization has failed, or that it means failure for social movements. Though there are four other ways in which social movements can decline. The first way a social movement can decline is repression. And that means control or to destroy a social movement. The next is coadaptation, and that means social movement leaders, they come to identify with power elites and authorities or movement targets, and that can include constituents or social movement constituents as well. The next stage of that decline is success. Now, successful social movements, they do end in decline and in defeat through repression and coadaptation. But some decline means that the social movement has achieved their goals. They are successful, or they fail totally. And failure of a social movement is often due to organizational and or strategic failings. Now, here's a quote from Wyatt T. Walker Sr., and he was the chief of staff to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And his quote is, "We never got the kind of leadership from politicians that the movement required." Now, this quote is a clear indication of the conflict between the social and the political scope and implications of social movement related to the civil rights movement. So I'm going to end here. This is, I'm at the end of this week's Lecturecast. And I want to end by saying that based on you taking my class, and I'm so appreciative that you guys chose my class to take, that this class is 3 credit hours. And a 3 credit hour course is a huge investment in yourselves, in your academic journey, in your education, and in your careers, your personal and professional interests, and also your interest in social justice that you all conveyed to me in our first week of introduction. So I have to make sure that I let you know that you all are expected to just show up, be present. You all are expected and are required to put in at least 9 clock hours of classwork, of homework, of reading, of watching the videos per week. 9 hours per week, your investment on a weekly basis for your 3 credit hour class that you are paying for. So I just wanted to make sure that I ended with that. I am here to continue to support you at Wayne State University for a world-class education. So I want you all to have a good week. Again, don't hesitate to reach out to me for any questions